wrapped in his worn-out blanket. The poor man drifted off to sleep and suddenly found himself no longer lying on the cold sidewalk, but standing tall on the glowing surface of the moon, wearing a sleek spacesuit, gazing at a futuristic city built beneath massive glass domes shimmering under the stars. On the side of the largest dome, glowing letters spelled out the name of his own company, Norse Space Industries, Hope for Humanity. In this dream, he was no longer a struggling tea seller from the narrow alleys of the city, no longer ignored or forgotten. He had become the world's first space billionaire, a visionary who had built the first permanent human settlement on the moon. It had all begun, even in the dream, with a single spark. A childhood night when he had stared at the moon from his rooftop, whispering, "One day, I'll go there." He had grown up with empty pockets but a mind full of ideas, collecting broken radios, discarded batteries, old science books from trash heaps, and learning bit by bit. One night in the dream, he discovered an abandoned prototype of a lunar propulsion device in a junkyard, a forgotten experiment from a secret space project. And after months of working alone, by candlelight, he rebuilt it with patience and passion. His first test flight failed, the second caught fire, but the third flew just enough to catch the world's attention. From that moment on, people began to notice. Scientists, journalists, and even billionaires reached out. But instead of selling his dream, he invited the poor, the rejected, the forgotten ones to join him. His space company was unlike any other. It welcomed those who had no degrees, no connections, only dreams and willingness to learn. Together, they built ships from scrap, grew moon crops using recycled Earth soil, and created homes that ran on solar power and kindness. Instead of selling seats to the rich, he offered free rides to students, poets, orphans, and dreamers. On the moon, he founded schools that taught curiosity, not just equations, and hospitals that healed with both medicine and music. Though he became richer than any man alive, he lived in a small glass cabin with a telescope, preferring to look at Earth every night and remember where he came from. People began calling him the King of the Moon, Servant of Earth. His fortune crossed trillions, but he spent most of it feeding the hungry, funding education, and restoring broken dreams back home. In his dream, the moon wasn't just a rock in space anymore. It had become a symbol of hope, a place where anyone could rise, no matter how low they'd once fallen. On the 50th anniversary of his first landing, a massive crowd gathered in a moon plaza, and instead of unveiling a statue of him, they revealed one of a barefoot child looking up at the stars, reminding everyone of how it all began. Just as he stepped up to give his speech, looking over a sea of smiling faces, Earth shining in the black sky behind them, a soft wind brushed his cheek, the breeze from a cracked window in his real-world alley. He opened his eyes slowly, the sound of traffic returning, the cold of the street creeping back in, and saw the same torn blanket, the same old tea kettle beside him. But something had changed. His eyes still held the moon's light, and his lips whispered once more, not in sadness, but in quiet certainty, "Someday, I'll still get there." As he closed his eyes, lying on the hard rooftop under the open sky, with only a thin sheet shielding him from the cold wind, the poor man drifted into a dream where the buzzing noise of the city faded, and a glowing screen appeared before him, showing lines of code he had never seen before, flowing from his fingers like poetry. In this dream, he wasn't just a jobless, self-taught coder struggling to borrow someone's Wi-Fi signal from a rooftop corner. He was the creator of an app that would change lives. The idea in his dream was so simple, a mobile application that let people send quick voice messages. Filled with kindness, just one thoughtful message a day to friends, strangers, even to themselves. And it rewarded people not with money, but with light points that tracked how many hearts they lifted. The dream version of himself built the entire app in one night, tapping away on a cracked phone with fingers that moved like magic. When he released it, the world responded instantly. First a few downloads, then hundreds, then millions, as influencers, students, tired parents, and lonely elders all started using the app, feeling a little less alone with every gentle ping. Celebrities tweeted about it, newspapers called it the app that healed the internet, and tech giants offered to buy it for millions. But Dream Him refused to sell. Instead, he turned down every offer and released a premium version that only asked for a smile instead of payment, and still, the revenue exploded. His earnings skyrocketed into the billions through ad partnerships with mental health orgs, donations from grateful users, and sponsorships by brands that supported his mission of digital empathy. In the dream, his bank account figures rose faster than he could understand, but he never stopped coding, never stopped improving the app. He hired teams of other self-taught developers, street kids, refugees, people who had been ignored like he once was, and gave them purpose, respect, and paychecks bigger than their wildest hopes. With his wealth, he started code from the hard schools across slums and villages, teaching kids that tech could be a tool for compassion, not just profit. World leaders began inviting him to speak, but he only ever appeared through his app's voice feature, reminding people that real power came from listening. His face was unknown, his name humble, but his influence spanned continents. In the dream, he bought his mother a house with sunlight in every room and built solar-powered tech hubs in places where people had never even seen a smartphone. He created a scholarship for those who had once failed school, like he did, and within a year, the dropout turned coder became a global hero. His app became more than a trend, it became a ritual, something people did like brushing their teeth. But for the soul, it even got translated into 97 languages and was used on space stations, refugee camps, hospitals, prisons, and classrooms. But just as he was about to receive the Digital Peace Prize from the United Nations in his dream, standing in front of thousands with lights flashing and applause echoing, a sharp knock on the rooftop door woke him. The dream faded, replaced by the gray morning sky and the smell of someone making tea downstairs. He sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes, the cold reel again. His old phone beside him still cracked, but his heart was racing. With a quiet smile, he opened a notes app, typed just 2 words, kind ping, and whispered to himself, maybe this dream was an idea. In his dream, the old man, whose hands were calloused from years of labor, and whose tiny mud hut stood quietly at the edge of the forest, awoke one morning to find the earth beneath his floor glittering faintly, soft sparkles glowing from between the cracks in the dirt. Curious, he dug a little, and there, nestled just beneath the surface, was a smooth golden nugget, warm to the touch, as if it had grown overnight like a root of light. He thought it must be a trick of the dream, but the next day, and the day after that, more gold appeared, sometimes a handful, sometimes a shimmering pile. Yet instead of hoarding it, or fleeing to the cities in search of fame, the man simply smiled, wrapped the gold in cloth, and left it at the doors of hungry families, poor widows, abandoned children, and broken schools. He fixed wells, rebuilt houses, paid off debts for strangers, and funded dreams he knew he'd never live to see. Word spread quietly. At first, mothers spoke of a mystery donor. Children whispered about the golden Baba who never showed his face. And soon, even local merchants and officials tried to track the source. But the man remained hidden in plain sight, still living in the same hut, cooking rice on the same fire, wearing the same patched clothes, greeting visitors with stories. Instead of answers, when questioned, he would laugh gently and say, "Maybe the earth just feels sorry for me." But deep down, in the heart of the dream, he believed the gold appeared because he had once cried into that very soil, long ago, when he had nothing left but prayers. As months passed, people came from far away not to find gold, but to see the man who gave without expecting anything in return. Artists painted him without knowing his face. Poets wrote verses about a hut that hummed with magic, and elders told children bedtime stories of the quiet giver who turned dust into destiny. Still, the old man never claimed any titles, never accepted invitations to rich palaces or televised interviews, and when offered awards, he simply sent back notes that said, "Let the next poor man have it." In the dream, his legend grew, larger than kings, yet he remained smaller than his shadow, choosing simplicity over spectacle. One night, in the dream, the gold stopped coming, but the people who had once been poor had already become strong, united, and kind. They planted trees where they'd once begged, built schools where there had been ruins, and passed on what they had received. The man, now older and weaker, sat outside his hut watching the sunset and smiled, not because he had given so much, but because he had proven that wealth means nothing unless it flows like a river, not piles like a wall. Just as the stars began to rise in the sky, a small child approached and gave him a flower, saying, "This is for all the gold you gave." U.S. The man looked at the flower, his eyes full of light, and whispered, "You're the real treasure." And just as the child laughed and ran away, the dream gently faded. Morning broke in the real world. The man, still lying in his creaky bed inside his crumbling hut, opened his eyes with a slow breath. There was no gold beneath him, only soil. Old and silent, but his chest felt full, as if the dream had left something behind. He sat up, stretched, and walked outside with a strange kind of peace in his heart. And though the world saw him as just another poor man with nothing, in his soul he still carried the feeling of that dream, the quiet power of giving, and the invisible crown of a legend no one saw being born. Sitting on a roadside tea stall, the man, tired from years of serving countless cups of tea to the busy crowd, rested his head against the cool metal wall behind him and dozed off. In his dream, the world around him faded, and he found himself no longer in the small, cluttered corner shop with its old, chipped mugs and cracked tiles. Instead, his tea stall had transformed into a sleek, modern cafe that stretched for miles, with elegant glass windows reflecting the warm glow of the sun. The sound of clinking teacups was replaced by the soft hum of conversation, the aroma of freshly brewed tea, mixing with the scent of pastries and exotic spices from across the world. His humble stall had become a global cafe chain, Chai World, with hundreds of branches across cities, countries, and continents. People of all walks of life, from corporate executives to backpackers, came to enjoy his special blend of tea, and the line at the counter never ended. His face, once forgotten and unremarkable, was now everywhere. Posters, TV ads, and billboards displayed his smiling image with the tagline, "The Billionaire Tea Man." It was a title he never imagined, yet in his dream, it felt like his destiny. His secret blend of tea, passed down from his grandmother, had captured the hearts of millions. And it wasn't just the taste that people loved. It was the experience, the warmth of his shop, the kindness with which he served each cup, and the way he made everyone feel at home. Over time, his cafe became a symbol of connection and comfort, a place where people could come together despite their differences. In the dream, he saw how his simple business grew into an empire, with staff trained to follow his philosophy of treating customers like family. Yet, despite his newfound wealth and fame, he remained the same humble man he had always been. He still wore the same simple shirt and trousers, still greeted every customer with a genuine smile, and still took a moment to chat with his employees. As he sat in his dream cafe, now a billionaire with a brand that spanned the globe, he reflected on how far he had come from the days of sitting on a dusty roadside, dreaming of something bigger. The dream was so vivid that he could hear the chatter of the cafe around him, the clink of spoons in teacups, the laughter of friends sharing stories over a hot drink. Yet amidst it all, he felt a quiet satisfaction not from his wealth, but from the joy of seeing others happy, sharing moments over a simple cup of tea. He thought of all the people who helped him along the way, his loyal customers, his employees, and the community that had supported him, and how he had never let go of the belief that small beginnings could lead to great things. The dream continued, and in it, he traveled the world, opening new cafes in bustling cities, quiet villages, and remote corners of the earth. Wherever he went, he introduced people to the magic of his tea and the power of human connection, making the world a little warmer, one cup at a time. And just when he thought the dream couldn't get any more surreal, a young man came up to him and said, "You've changed my life. Your tea, your kindness, it's not just a drink, it's hope." He smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest that no amount of wealth could ever replace. But as quickly as it came, the dream faded. He opened his eyes to find himself back at his roadside stall, the sun setting, and the evening crowd beginning to gather. The smell of brewing tea filled the air, and he smiled softly, realizing that perhaps the dream wasn't so far-fetched. After all, the road ahead was long, but he knew that if he continued to pour his heart into every cup, the world might one day be ready for his simple, yet extraordinary, tea. And in that quiet moment, he knew the world was waiting for something more than just a cup. It was waiting for the warmth of hope, served with a dash of tea as he sat hunched over his old, worn-out desk, the quiet hum of the evening surrounding him. The man felt the weight of unfulfilled dreams pressing against his chest. With a tired hand, he picked up his pen, staring at the blank page before him, wondering if his words would ever matter. But that night, as sleep took him, he found himself in a dream where the world was different. He was no longer the struggling writer whose stories never seemed to catch the right attention. In the dream, his pen danced effortlessly across the page, weaving together words that felt as if they were born from the depths of his soul, each sentence resonating with truth, emotion, and wisdom. His book, written from the heart, began to take shape, no longer a mere collection of thoughts, but a powerful story that connected with every person who read it. The words spilled out faster than he could write, each chapter flowing smoothly, touching deep emotions within him that he never knew existed. When the book was finally finished, he released it to the world with no grand expectation, but to his astonishment, the book became an instant success. It wasn't the flashy marketing or the big publishers that made it soar. It was the raw honesty and the way it spoke to the hearts of readers from all walks of life. The message was simple yet profound, a story of hope, resilience, and love that transcended borders. People from every corner of the world began reading it. It was translated into dozens of languages, with each version capturing the same magic, the same feeling, the same deep connection. His book touched millions, from teenagers in bustling cities to elders in quiet villages, from busy professionals to lost wanderers. As the days passed, the sales numbers skyrocketed, but it wasn't the money he was focused on. It was the letters he received from readers, the messages of gratitude, the stories of how his book had helped them find light in their darkest moments. The dream showed him his name appearing on bestseller lists across the globe, his face on magazine covers, and interviews where people praised his writing as if he had unlocked some universal truth. And then, as the dream unfolded, the unimaginable happened. He became the richest author alive. With his newfound wealth, he didn't indulge in luxury or fame. Instead, he used his fortune to build libraries in the poorest parts of the world, funded education for children who couldn't afford it, and helped young writers who struggled just like he once had. He created a foundation to support creativity and artistic expression, believing that everyone had a story worth telling. But in this dream, it wasn't about the riches or the recognition, it was about the lives he touched, the people he helped, and the voices he had inspired to speak their truths. Even as his name became synonymous with success, he remained humble, always remembering the long nights spent writing by candlelight, unsure if anyone would ever read his work. In the final moments of the dream, he stood on a stage before an audience of thousands, holding his book high in the air. As he looked out, he saw not just the faces of adoring fans, but the faces of readers whose lives had been transformed by his words. They had found hope in the pages of his book, just as he had found hope in the act of writing it. And just as he was about to speak, the dream began to fade, and he woke up to the quiet of his small room, the pen still in his hand, the same blank page waiting for him. The world outside hadn't changed, but something inside him had. His heart felt lighter, his mind clearer. He knew that the journey wasn't over. It had just begun, and with a renewed sense of purpose, he began to write again, this time not for fame, not for wealth, but because his story, like everyone else's, was worth telling. And who knew? Maybe one day, his dream would come true. Every night, after the day's struggles had worn him down, the man would fall asleep on the small, tattered couch in his cramped apartment, his heart heavy with dreams of a life beyond poverty. In his waking life, he worked as a simple janitor, his hands stained with the remnants of dust and labor, never once imagining that art, something he had always loved but never dared to pursue, would ever be his ticket out of the darkness. But one night, as he drifted into a deep sleep, something incredible happened. In the dream, he found himself in a vast, surreal world of vibrant, unearthly landscapes, a place where the rules of reality didn't apply. The air shimmered with a glow that seemed to pulse with life, and the colors around him were unlike any he had ever seen before. Hues that danced and shifted like liquid light, blending in ways that seemed impossible. Without any formal training or understanding of how, he picked up a paintbrush and began to paint, his hands moving fluidly, as though guided by an unseen force. The colors from his dreams filled the canvas, swirling in intricate patterns, creating images of beauty and mystery that could not be described with words. In the dream, he wasn't limited by the confines of what he knew. He painted cities suspended in the sky, oceans that glowed in the dark, and mountains that seemed to sing. Each stroke brought the world of his mind to life in ways that felt more real than reality itself. When he awoke the next morning, he could still feel the vividness of the colors in his mind, driven by the dream's intensity. He rushed to find some old, forgotten paints and brushes tucked away in the back of his closet. For days, he painted feverishly, recreating the images that had danced in his sleep, his hands moving with an energy he hadn't known he possessed. The work was like nothing he had ever seen before, bold, wild, yet hauntingly beautiful. He poured his heart into each stroke, letting the dream guide him as he translated it onto the canvas. Soon, word spread about his mysterious paintings. People in the neighborhood, curious about the janitor who had suddenly become an artist, began visiting his small apartment. One day, an art dealer who had been passing through town heard of his work and stopped by. Upon seeing the paintings, the dealer's eyes widened with disbelief. He immediately offered to buy them, insisting that these works, created from a place of pure, untainted emotion, were worth far more than their weight in gold. A few weeks later, one of his dream paintings was put up for auction, and to everyone's astonishment, it sold for an astronomical amount of money. The painting, with its vibrant, impossible colors, had captivated the world, and suddenly, the janitor-turned-artist became the talk of the art world. His life, which had once been filled with quiet struggles, was now changed forever. People began to seek him out, not just as an artist but as a symbol of transformation and possibility. His paintings began to hang in galleries, and the wealthy, once out of his reach, were eager to own a piece of his dream. But despite the fame and fortune, the man never forgot the humble origins of his art, the quiet nights, the dreams that had whispered to him in his sleep, and the belief that sometimes the greatest treasures are born from the most unlikely places. In the years that followed, he continued to paint, no longer for survival but for the pure joy of creating. His works, always inspired by the vivid colors of his dreams, touched hearts around the world, and his story became one of legend, a reminder that even in the most ordinary of lives, extraordinary things can happen, if only we dare to dream. And so, he lived out his days as the artist who painted with colors no one had ever seen before. A man who once swept floors and now left his mark on the world's most prestigious walls, forever changed by the power of his dreams. That night, as he lay in his worn bed after another long day of struggles, the man fell into a deep sleep, his tired body desperate for rest. But instead of the usual dark void of his dreams, he found himself in a bright, peaceful garden bathed in golden light. The air was filled with the soft scent of jasmine, and in front of him stood an angel, radiant and serene. Without a word, the angel extended a hand, offering him a small, simple wallet. This wallet, the angel said, will never empty. You can take from it as much as you need, and it will always be full. The man, in awe and disbelief, hesitated for a moment before gently accepting the wallet. The angel smiled and told him, "Use it wisely, for it is not just for you. You are to use it to help those in need, to feed the hungry, clothe the poor, and lift those who are struggling." As the angel's voice faded, the man found himself back in the familiar streets of his own town, standing on a busy corner with the wallet in his hand. The world around him was the same as it always had been, crowded, noisy, and filled with the faces of people struggling to get by. He glanced at the wallet, and with trembling hands, he opened it. To his astonishment, the wallet was filled with money, more money than he had ever seen in his life. But even more incredible was that no matter how much he took out, he knew immediately what he had to do. Without a second thought, he went to the nearest market and bought food, clothes, and basic supplies, handing them out to the homeless, the hungry, and the sick. People gathered around him, their eyes wide with surprise as he gave them everything they needed, from warm meals to shoes and blankets. Word spread quickly, and soon, People from all corners of the town came to him, desperate for help. Day after day, he opened the wallet, and without fail, it was always full, ready to give. The man didn't stop at just feeding the poor. He used the wallet to pay for medical bills, send children to school, and help families get back on their feet. He built shelters for those without homes and provided jobs for those struggling to make ends meet. In his dream, the town that had once seemed so cold and indifferent began to transform. What had once been a place of hardship now buzzed with hope and kindness. People who had once been selfish and distant were now helping each other, inspired by the man's selflessness and generosity. They, too, started to offer what they could, and slowly, the town became a model of compassion and unity. As the weeks passed in his dream, the man's fame grew, but he never sought recognition or reward. He continued to use the magic wallet as the angel had instructed, quietly helping thousands of people, his heart full of love and gratitude for the gift he had been given. And just when he thought the dream couldn't be more beautiful, he woke up with a start, the familiar sounds of the world around him greeting his ears. His bed, his small room, everything was just as it had been before, but there was something different about him. His heart felt lighter, and his mind clearer, as if the dream had given him a sense of purpose that he hadn't had before. He rose from his bed, walked to his modest kitchen, and made himself a cup of tea. Wondering if the dream had truly been just a dream, he smiled softly, realizing that even if the magic wallet wasn't real, he had the power to help in small ways, whether it was sharing what little he had with those in need or simply offering a kind word. And so, while the magic wallet stayed locked away in the realm of dreams, he knew that the true power of giving was something that lived in his heart, ready to be shared with the world. One night, after the day's work, the man drifted into a deep sleep, escaping the monotony of his everyday life. In his dream, he found himself sitting at a desk surrounded by computers. But there was something different about this world. It was a realm of digital possibilities, where anything could be created and shared. Suddenly, an idea struck him like a lightning bolt. With no hesitation, he began typing furiously, his hands moving with a speed and purpose he had never known. He created a new digital coin, one that was unlike anything the world had seen. It wasn't just another cryptocurrency. It was designed with an unprecedented balance of security, fairness, and sustainability. He called it Harmonia, a name that reflected its goal to bring harmony to the chaotic world of finance. In his dream, as the coin began to circulate, it gained immediate traction. People from all corners of the globe recognized its value not only because of its potential for financial growth, but because it was built on principles of equality and transparency. The coin's value skyrocketed, and soon, it became the most sought-after currency in the world. But unlike other cryptocurrency creators, he wasn't driven by greed or the desire for personal wealth. Instead, he focused on how Harmonia could empower others, particularly those who had been left behind by traditional financial systems. With his newfound wealth, he built schools, hospitals, and community centers around the world, ensuring that people in even the most impoverished regions had access to opportunities and resources. As the dream continued, he found himself not just as a creator of a successful coin, but as the ruler of a global crypto kingdom. His influence extended far beyond the digital realm, as he worked tirelessly to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor, the powerful and the powerless. He became known not as a ruthless businessman, but as a compassionate leader who cared deeply about the welfare of others. His decisions were guided not by profit, but by a desire to make the world a better place. And under his rule, the world's economy flourished in ways that had once seemed impossible. People began to trust him, not only because of the wealth he had created but because of the integrity with which he governed. No longer was the world divided by the haves and the have-nots. Instead, there was a sense of unity and shared purpose. In his dream, as Harmonia continued to grow and thrive, the man felt a profound sense of peace. The wealth he had amassed was no longer just a symbol of financial success. It was a tool for changing lives, for lifting communities out of poverty, for fostering collaboration and innovation across borders. He had built an empire, not out of greed, but out of a genuine desire to improve the lives of others, and in doing so, he had created a lasting legacy that would endure for generations. The dream was so vivid that he could almost hear the sound of people cheering, not for him, but for the positive change he had brought to the world. But just as the dream seemed to reach its peak, he awoke with a start, his heart still racing from the intensity of the vision. For a moment, he lay there, stunned by the clarity and beauty of the dream, unsure if it had been just a figment of his imagination or something more. As he sat up in bed, the world outside his window looked the same, quiet, ordinary, and unremarkable. Yet, in his heart, he knew something had shifted. He didn't have a digital coin or a crypto empire, but he now understood that wealth wasn't just about money. It was about using the resources you had to make a difference. Inspired by the dream, he decided to act, no longer waiting for the world to change but determined to be the catalyst for that change. He started small, helping those around him, sharing what he had, offering his time and skills to those in need. While he may not have ruled a crypto kingdom, he realized that he could still rule his own life with compassion, and that, in itself, was a power that could change the world one evening. As the soft hum of his old radio filled the room, the man, tired from a day of relentless work, sank into his worn-out chair. The radio had been his companion for years, its crackling static the soundtrack to his humble life. He often listened to the voices of others who spoke with such confidence, telling stories, sharing news, and even soothing the hearts of listeners. But his own voice, he believed, would never be heard by the world. As he drifted into sleep beside the radio, he found himself in an entirely different world, a world where his voice held power unlike anything he could have imagined. In this dream, his voice was a healing force, a melody that could soothe pain, erase sorrow, and bring comfort to those who listened. He began speaking in the dream, at first softly, and then with growing clarity. His words wrapped around people's hearts, mending wounds, easing fears, and filling them with an overwhelming sense of peace. In the dream, people who had suffered in silence, from heartbreak to physical pain, would listen to his voice and instantly feel relief. His words seemed to create a balm for the soul, transforming sorrow into hope, loneliness into connection, and despair into faith. The more he spoke, the more people tuned in, not just from his neighborhood but from distant places around the world. His voice became a source of comfort, something people sought during times of hardship, longing, and pain. His audience grew by the day, and soon, he realized that he had become an audio sensation. The dream was so vivid, so real, that when he awoke the next morning, he was still filled with the warmth of the voices he had helped. He turned on his old radio, unsure of what he expected, but as the familiar crackle came to life, a thought formed in his mind. Perhaps, just perhaps, his voice could have the power to heal even in the real world. Without much hesitation, he recorded a simple message, a calming, soothing tone, addressing the worries of the world and offering comfort. He uploaded it to a small platform, unsure of whether anyone would even listen. But the response was immediate. People from all walks of life began reaching out, telling him how his voice had made them feel better, how it had helped them through their darkest moments. The message was simple, yet it resonated deeply. "You are not alone," he would say. "No matter how hard it gets, remember, the sun will rise again." His voice became a balm for the weary, a light for those in need. As the days passed, his popularity surged. Listeners from across the globe tuned in, seeking the soothing sounds of his words, his gentle, caring tone that seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 emotions. People started to recognize him, not just for his voice, but for the kindness and warmth it radiated. Soon, his voice wasn't just healing people's hearts, it was bringing in wealth, as advertisements, sponsorships, and partnerships flowed in. But despite the fame and fortune, the man remained humble. He knew that the true gift he had been given was not wealth or recognition, but the ability to make a difference in the lives of others. His voice, once just a quiet echo in a room, now resonated across continents, touching millions. He built foundations, funded mental health programs, and created spaces where people could find comfort, all while continuing to share his message of hope. His life, once filled with struggle and solitude, became one of abundance not just in wealth but in purpose. He had become more than just an audio sensation. He had become a symbol of healing, a voice for the broken-hearted, and a source of strength for those who needed it most. And as he sat by his radio, now broadcasting his voice to the world, he realized that the dream he had was no longer just a dream. His voice had healed pain, brought people together, and made him wealthy beyond measure, not just in money, but in love, gratitude, and the profound impact he had made. It was a legacy that would last long after the echoes of his voice faded, forever etched in the hearts of those he had touched. One night, after a long day filled with hard work and little reward, the man drifted off to sleep in his modest room, his mind yearning for something more, something beyond the daily struggles that seemed to never end. In his dream, he found himself sitting at a computer, the glow of the screen casting a soft light on his face. He had no formal background in design or programming, but something deep inside him told him that he could create something amazing. Without hesitation, he began working on a game, one that was simple but captivating, designed with bright colors, fun characters, and challenges that would make kids of all ages laugh and think. The concept was easy to grasp: a world of playful creatures, magical lands, and endless adventures. Every tap on the screen, every swipe, would reveal new secrets and treasures. It was a game that anyone could play, from the youngest toddlers to the most seasoned gamers. As he worked, the characters he created seemed to come alive in his dream, each one more vibrant and joyful than the last. With each level, the game became more enchanting, and as he added little surprises and rewards, the game's charm began to shine through. He felt a connection to the children who would one day play it, imagining their delighted faces as they conquered challenges and unlocked new worlds. The game, though born in a dream, was more than just a fleeting idea. It was a living, breathing creation that seemed destined for success. When he woke up, he was overwhelmed by the clarity of his vision. The game felt so real, so possible, that he couldn't shake the feeling that it was meant to be. Even though he had no experience in game development, he knew he had to try. With determination, he taught himself the basics of coding, spending sleepless nights working on the game, turning the dream into reality. Slowly, bit by bit, the game began to take shape. It wasn't perfect, but it had heart, and he believed in it. When the game was finally ready, he launched it on a popular app store, unsure of what to expect. But to his astonishment, within days, the game spread like wildfire. Kids from all over the world began downloading it, tapping and swiping their way through the levels, sharing their high scores, and laughing at the adorable characters he had created. Each new smile, each new player, felt like a personal victory. It didn't take long before the game became a sensation. Schools, playgrounds, and families all over the world were buzzing with excitement about this new game. What started as a simple dream had now become a global phenomenon. The game not only brought joy to millions, but with every download, every in-app purchase, his pockets began to fill with riches. Yet, it wasn't just the money that made him happy. It was the smiles and laughter of children, the joy that radiated from every corner of the world. He had built something that connected people, something that transcended borders, language, and culture. His creation became a symbol of fun and creativity, and he was celebrated not just for his success, but for the happiness he had brought to others. As the game's popularity soared, he found himself with more money than he could have ever dreamed of. But unlike the typical stories of wealth, he wasn't consumed by greed. Instead, he used his newfound fortune to give back, funding educational programs, building playgrounds, and supporting causes that helped children all over the world. His game had done more than fill his pockets with money. It had filled his heart with purpose. And as he sat back and watched the joy his creation brought to kids across the globe, he realized that the riches he had gained were nothing compared to the wealth of happiness, love, and connection that his game had spread. In the end, he understood that his dream had come true in ways he had never expected, turning him into not just a wealthy man, but a source of joy for millions of children. And in that, he found his true treasure. Late one evening, after yet another grueling day of work in a small, dimly lit shack, the man sank into his bed, exhausted and worn. The weight of hunger and financial stress pressed heavily on him, and sleep seemed like his only escape. But as he drifted off into a deep slumber, a strange and wonderful dream unfolded before him. In the dream, he found himself standing in his backyard, the moon casting a gentle glow over the earth. But there was something completely different about the scene. A small tree had sprouted in the center of his yard. It wasn't there before. He was sure of it. As he looked closer, he saw something even more astonishing. The branches of the tree were heavy with what appeared to be bundles of cash, hundreds, thousands of bills, all neatly arranged and gleaming under the moonlight. Every morning, the tree would bloom anew, its branches heavy with even more money. He couldn't believe his eyes. Every time he needed cash for food, for bills, or even just to get by, he could simply step outside, walk to the tree, and pick the money he needed from its branches. The dream felt so real, so vivid, that he could almost smell the crisp scent of the fresh bills and hear the rustling of the cash as the wind gently blew through the leaves. Each morning, as the sun rose, the tree's branches would once again sprout with an abundance of cash, and without a second thought, he would pluck what he needed. The worry and hunger that once plagued his daily existence disappeared with each new bloom. As the days passed in the dream, his life became one of peace and security. No longer did he have to worry about going hungry or the dread of unpaid bills. The tree provided everything he needed and more, allowing him to focus on what truly mattered, living a life of purpose and kindness. He no longer lived in fear of the next payday or the next empty pantry. He shared the wealth freely with his neighbors, ensuring that no one went hungry, and using the abundance to help those in need. The more he shared, the more the tree seemed to bloom, as if the universe itself had conspired to reward his generosity. As the dream continued, he noticed that the tree was not just a source of financial relief, but it also brought happiness and prosperity to everyone around him. His once quiet and lonely yard became a hub of joy, where friends, family, and neighbors gathered to share meals and stories. The tree became a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, a little light could grow into something extraordinary. But as the days passed in the dream, and the man basked in the abundance he had once only dreamed of, he slowly began to wake up. The warmth of the sun on his face, the chirping of birds, and the soft rustle of leaves outside brought him back to reality. He opened his eyes, feeling the weight of the morning sun on his skin. For a moment, he lay still, unsure if he had been dreaming or if what he had experienced had been real. When he glanced outside, there was no tree with bundles of cash waiting for him. His yard was quiet, his small house just as it had been before. But as he sat up, something had changed inside him. He realized that while there was no magical tree in his yard, the dream had given him something much more valuable, a renewed sense of hope. He knew now that if he approached life with the same generosity and kindness he had in the dream, he could find ways to create abundance, not just for himself, but for others. The dream had taught him that wealth wasn't always about having endless resources. It was about sharing what you had, being resourceful, and finding ways to help those in need. While his yard didn't bloom with cash every morning, he knew that he could still make a difference. And so, with a smile on his face and a heart full of gratitude, he faced the day ahead, knowing that even though the tree may have been a dream, the possibilities of a brighter, more generous future were very real. After a long day of struggling to make ends meet, the man lay down on his bed, the weight of his worries heavy on his chest. He had always been a thinker, someone who pondered the deeper questions of life, but his wisdom had never seemed to have a place in the world. He often found himself giving advice to friends and family, and though they appreciated his words, it never seemed to bring him anything more than temporary comfort. But one night, as he fell into a peaceful sleep, he found himself in a different world, a world where his thoughts and insights had true value. In the dream, he saw himself sitting at a desk, much like his own, but surrounded by screens that connected him to millions of people. He had created an app, a simple, user-friendly platform where people from all corners of the globe could ask him questions and seek his guidance. People in need of advice on everything from relationships to careers, from personal growth to finances, flocked to his app. With a calm, reassuring voice, he answered their questions, offering deep insights and thoughtful solutions. Each time someone listened to his advice, they felt a sense of clarity and peace that had eluded them before. They felt grateful and inspired, eager to hear more. In the dream, his reputation as a wise and compassionate guru spread like wildfire. It wasn't long before people were willing to pay for his advice, eager to tap into his wisdom. The app became a global sensation, a platform where users paid a small fee to hear his thoughts on their most pressing issues. As the money flowed in, he realized that he wasn't just helping people, he was changing their lives. The advice he shared wasn't just superficial or trivial. It had depth, power, and meaning. People sought him out not because he was a celebrity, but because his words resonated with their souls, guiding them through difficult times and helping them find their true purpose. The dream continued, and soon the app expanded. With the wealth he had generated, He built a team of experts to help him manage the growing demand. But even with his success, he remained grounded. He continued to offer free sessions for those who couldn't afford his paid services, ensuring that his wisdom remained accessible to all. In the dream, he became a billionaire, not because he had amassed a fortune through greed or exploitation, but because he had created something of true value, a platform that helped people grow, find peace, and live better lives. His app wasn't just a business, it was a movement, a global community of people who were committed to personal growth and positive change. The more he gave, the more the universe seemed to reward him, not with material wealth alone, but with a deep sense of fulfillment and purpose. People from every corner of the world, from all walks of life, came to him for guidance, and he responded with wisdom and compassion. As the dream began to fade, he awoke with a start, his heart racing with excitement. The world around him was the same as it had been when he fell asleep, quiet, humble, and ordinary. But inside, something had shifted. He knew that the dream wasn't just a fantasy, it was a vision of what could be. With determination and a new sense of purpose, he began to work on turning his dream into reality. He spent the following months learning the ins and outs of app development, gathering a small team, and designing an app that would allow him to share his wisdom with the world. Slowly but surely, his vision began to take shape. And though it wasn't easy, he poured his heart and soul into it. And just as in the dream, the app gained traction. People loved it. They came for the wisdom, but stayed for the sense of community, the feeling of connection, and the knowledge that they were becoming better versions of themselves. Eventually, the man became known as the billionaire guru, not because of his wealth, but because of the deep, lasting impact his words had on the world. And as he sat back one day, reflecting on the success of his app, he realized that the dream had come true. He had built not just a business, but a legacy, a place where people could find peace, clarity, and the guidance they needed to navigate life's toughest challenges. And through it all, he had become the very thing he had always dreamed of, a guru who not only changed lives, but whose thoughts had become invaluable to millions around the world. One night, after hours of restless thinking about how little he had achieved in life, the man finally fell asleep, his mind still swirling with worries of the future. But in his dream, everything was different. He found himself standing in front of a massive factory, the sound of gears and ticking filling the air. The factory was unlike any other. It was not just a place that produced watches, but a space where time itself came to life. In this dream world, he was the master watchmaker, not simply creating timepieces that told time, but watches that held stories within them. Each piece he crafted was unique, with a history etched into its very design. When the watches were wound, they didn't just show the hour or minute. They told the story of the person who wore it, their life experiences, their dreams, and even the moments that had shaped them. Some watches glowed with the memories of family gatherings. Others whispered tales of lost love, while some carried the stories of people who had traveled to the farthest reaches of the world. The man was astonished. Each timepiece was more than just a tool to tell time. It was a vessel of memories, emotions, and adventures. People from all walks of life came to the factory, eager to own one of these magical watches. The demand was overwhelming, and they were willing to pay anything to possess a piece of history, a story that belonged to no one else but them. Some sought watches that told tales of joy, while others were drawn to those that held stories of struggle and triumph. The factory became renowned across the world, with collectors and dreamers alike willing to spend their fortunes to acquire these remarkable timepieces. The man's dream factory grew into an empire, each watch a masterpiece, each one telling its own unique narrative. As the factory flourished, the man realized that the watches were not only changing the lives of those who owned them, but they were also helping people connect with their own stories in ways they had never imagined. Each time a person looked at their watch, they were reminded of who they were and where they came from, giving them a sense of purpose and meaning in the midst of their busy lives. In this dream, the man was not just a watchmaker, he was a creator of memories, a keeper of time itself, and a weaver of human experiences. The watches he made brought people closer to their pasts, to the moments that truly mattered, and gave them a way to carry those memories forward. As his success continued to grow, he knew that he had created something more powerful than wealth or fame. He had built a legacy, a factory where time was more than just a number on a dial. It was a story, a journey, a life lived. When the dream finally began to fade, the man awoke with a start, his heart racing. For a moment, he lay still, unsure whether the dream had been real or just a product of his subconscious. But as he sat up, he realized that the dream had given him a new vision. It was a reminder that true value wasn't just in the material or the tangible, it was in the stories we carry with us, the memories we hold dear, and the moments that shape who we are. He knew then that he had to make that dream a reality. With determination, he began to sketch designs for his watches, focusing on the idea of capturing stories in every piece. He spent years developing his craft, learning everything he could about watchmaking, and finding a way to combine his passion for storytelling with the art of creating timepieces. Eventually, after many struggles and setbacks, he built his first collection, a set of watches that, just like in his dream, told stories. To his amazement, people loved them. They bought his watches not because they told the time, but because they spoke to their hearts, connecting them to their own journeys. The factory he once dreamed of became real, and his watches became treasures, each one holding a story that would never be forgotten. And in that moment, the man realized that the dream had not only changed his life but had shown him the true power of time, how it holds our stories, and how, when shared, it becomes priceless. One night, after another long day of struggling with the weight of life's challenges, the man drifted off into a deep sleep, his mind seeking an escape from the hardships that had become all too familiar. As he slept, a vivid and enchanting dream unfolded. In it, he saw himself standing behind a brightly colored booth, its sign boldly proclaiming happiness in a box. Curious, people from all walks of life approached, drawn to the promise of joy encapsulated in a small, neat package. The booth was simple yet inviting, filled with an array of boxes of all shapes and sizes, each one labeled with a word: laughter, hope, peace, gratitude, and love. He stood there, a warm smile on his face, as people eagerly approached him, wondering what could possibly be inside these mysterious boxes. Without saying a word, he handed one box to a weary traveler. As the traveler opened it, a burst of light filled the air, and a wave of peace and happiness swept over them. They couldn't help but smile, their burden lifted for the first time in ages. A moment of pure joy, one that seemed to transcend the chaos of the world. The traveler paid, grateful, beyond words, and walked away with a spring in their step. As more and more people gathered around, he handed out box after box, each filled with a unique form of happiness. Some contained small tokens that sparked memories of loved ones. Others held tiny trinkets that brought out deep laughter. And some even contained notes of kindness that lifted people's spirits in unexpected ways. Word spread quickly, and soon people from all over the world lined up at his booth, eager to experience the magic of happiness in a box. The demand was overwhelming, and each time someone opened a box, they were met with a joy that seemed to heal their soul. What amazed him most was that the happiness wasn't confined to material things or fleeting moments. It was a deeper, more profound sense of well-being, one that stayed with the people long after they had walked away. They came for the box, but left with something far more precious, a renewed sense of joy and purpose. As the dream continued, his booth grew into a bustling global phenomenon. It wasn't long before people were willing to pay anything to receive the gift of happiness. Celebrities, politicians, teachers, and parents, all of them came, each seeking something different but always leaving with a smile, their hearts lighter, their worries softened. The boxes didn't just offer a moment of escape from the pressures of life. They helped people reconnect with the simple joys that often get lost in the hustle and bustle of everyday living. And through it all, the man realized something remarkable. The happiness wasn't coming from the boxes themselves, it was coming from the simple act of giving, from the act of sharing joy with others. His dream had transformed into a movement, a reminder that happiness could be found in the smallest of gifts, the simplest of actions, and the most heartfelt of gestures. People no longer needed to search for happiness in extravagant possessions or fleeting moments of success. They could find it in the connections they made with others, in the kindness they shared, and in the gratitude they carried in their hearts. When he awoke, the dream still lingered in his mind, a vivid vision of how something as simple as a box could hold the power to change lives. Inspired by the dream, he began to work on making his vision a reality. He started small, creating little packages of joy, filled with thoughtful messages, small tokens of appreciation, and reminders to cherish the present moment. His business grew, and while it was not always easy, the man remained true to the heart of his dream, bringing happiness to others. Over time, people came to understand that the happiness in a box wasn't just about the physical items inside. It was about the reminder that joy could be found anywhere, even in the smallest of gestures. And as he watched the world come alive with the simple act of giving and receiving happiness, he realized that his dream had come true in ways he never expected. His happiness in a box became more than just a product, it became a symbol of love, kindness, and the belief that true happiness could be shared by everyone, no matter where they came from or what they had. And through it all, the man smiled, knowing that in giving happiness, he had found his own. One night, exhausted from the endless grind of his mundane life, the man drifted into a dream that felt like nothing he had ever experienced before. In his dream, he found himself holding a small, shimmering cube. Its surface was smooth and cool to the touch, glimmering with an otherworldly light. It was no ordinary cube. It seemed to pulse with energy, as if alive. When he held it, a voice whispered softly in his mind, telling him that this was a magic cube, one capable of transforming into anything the holder desired. No matter how extravagant or impossible, the cube could turn into riches beyond imagination, a palace in the sky, or even a magical land of his own creation. It could fulfill any wish, material or abstract, and with each wish it granted, the man felt an overwhelming sense of power and wonder. As the dream unfolded, he realized that the cube didn't just offer material wealth, it gave the holder the ability to manifest their deepest desires, be it love, success, or unimaginable luxury. He could make anything appear with just a thought, and the possibilities were endless. The world around him shifted and changed as he experimented with the cube, turning barren fields into lush forests, empty streets into vibrant cities, and dusty homes into luxurious mansions. He smiled at the wonders the cube could create, but soon, something more curious began to happen. Word of the magic cube spread like wildfire, and soon, wealthy men and women from all over the world came to find him. They were not just interested in acquiring the cube, they were desperate to possess it. The richest men in the world, from kings to billionaires, traveled great distances to stand before him, each one eager to hold the cube, to have their own wishes granted by its extraordinary power. They offered him fortunes, precious jewels, and priceless treasures in exchange for just a moment with the cube. But he refused. The magic of the cube was not to be sold. He knew it was something much more powerful, something that could change the very fabric of existence. Yet, despite his refusal, the rich men persisted, even resorting to cunning and manipulation, believing that with the cube in their possession, they could control the world. They promised him unimaginable wealth and luxury in exchange for just one cube. But the man remained steadfast. As he stood there, watching the greed and desire in their eyes, he realized that the cube was not just a tool for personal gain. It was a test of character, a reminder of what truly mattered in life. The cube offered the world anything it wished, but in doing so, it also revealed the emptiness of material wealth when it was pursued for the wrong reasons. He understood that true happiness could not be bought with riches or power. It lay in the simplicity of life, in the joy of giving, and in the connections formed between people. As the dream began to fade and the rich men's pleas turned into distant echoes, the man awoke with a new sense of clarity. Though the cube was not real, the lesson it held was undeniable. The pursuit of wealth, status, and power, while tempting, could never replace the joy found in kindness, love, and gratitude. He knew that he would carry this wisdom with him into his waking life, understanding that true magic didn't lie in material possessions or in turning a cube into anything he desired. It was in the way he treated others, in the way he chose to live each day with purpose and integrity. And though the dream had ended, its lessons stayed with him, forever reminding him that the greatest treasures in life could never be bought. They were created through the choices we make and the love we share. One night, after the weight of his daily struggles became too much to bear, the man fell into a deep, peaceful sleep. In his dream, he found himself standing in front of a microphone, his voice inexplicably clear and soothing, as though it had the power to heal the world. Without any effort, the words that left his lips were soft and gentle, resonating with a calming frequency that seemed to touch the hearts of those who listened. As he spoke, he felt an overwhelming sense of peace and purpose, as though his voice was a channel for something much greater than himself. The people who heard him were no longer filled with the worries that once consumed them. The elderly woman, sitting alone in her house, felt the weight of her years lift, her anxiety about the future fading into the background. The young man, struggling with the stress of life's pressures, suddenly felt a sense of calm wash over him, his fears dissolving like mist in the morning sun. Even those who had been battling deep sadness found themselves smiling softly, their hearts filled with warmth and comfort. He could make anything appear with just a thought, and the possibilities were endless. The world around him shifted and changed as he experimented with the cube, turning barren fields into lush forests, empty streets into vibrant cities, and dusty homes into luxurious mansions. He smiled at the wonders the cube could create, but soon, something more curious began to happen. Word of the magic cube spread like wildfire, and soon, wealthy men and women from all over the world came to find him. They were not just interested in acquiring the cube, they were desperate to possess it. The richest men in the world, from kings to billionaires, traveled great distances to stand before him, each one eager to hold the cube, to have their own wishes granted by its extraordinary power. They offered him fortunes, precious jewels, and priceless treasures in exchange for just a moment with the cube. But he refused. The magic of the cube was not to be sold. He knew it was something much more powerful, something that could change the very fabric of existence. Yet, despite his refusal, the rich men persisted, even resorting to cunning and manipulation, believing that with the cube in their possession, they could control the world. They promised him unimaginable wealth and luxury in exchange for just one cube. But the man remained steadfast. As he stood there, watching the greed and desire in their eyes, he realized that the cube was not just a tool for personal gain. It was a test of character, a reminder of what truly mattered in life. The cube offered the world anything it wished, but in doing so, it also revealed the emptiness of material wealth when it was pursued for the wrong reasons. He understood that true happiness could not be bought with riches or power. It lay in the simplicity of life, in the joy of giving, and in the connections formed between people. As the dream began to fade and the rich men's pleas turned into distant echoes, the man awoke with a new sense of clarity. Though the cube was not real, the lesson it held was undeniable. The pursuit of wealth, status, and power, while tempting, could never replace the joy found in kindness, love, and gratitude. He knew that he would carry this wisdom with him into his waking life, understanding that true magic didn't lie in material possessions or in turning a cube into anything he desired. It was in the way he treated others, in the way he chose to live each day with purpose and integrity. And though the dream had ended, its lessons stayed with him, forever reminding him that the greatest treasures in life could never be bought. They were created through the choices we make and the love we share. One night, after the weight of his daily struggles became too much to bear, the man fell into a deep, peaceful sleep. In his dream, he found himself standing in front of a microphone, his voice inexplicably clear and soothing, as though it had the power to heal the world. Without any effort, the words that left his lips were soft and gentle, resonating with a calming frequency that seemed to touch the hearts of those who listened. As he spoke, he felt an overwhelming sense of peace and purpose, as though his voice was a channel for something much greater than himself. The people who heard him were no longer filled with the worries that once consumed them. The elderly woman, sitting alone in her house, felt the weight of her years lift, her anxiety about the future fading into the background. The young man, struggling with the stress of life's pressures, suddenly felt a sense of calm wash over him, his fears dissolving like mist in the morning sun. Even those who had been battling deep sadness found themselves smiling softly, their hearts filled with warmth and comfort. His voice, though quiet, had an incredible power. It healed the mind and soothed the soul. Word of his dream began to spread quickly, and people sought him out not for fame or fortune, but for the peace they had found in his words. As more and more people experienced the calming effects of his voice, the man began recording his soothing talks, turning them into audio tapes. These tapes, simple yet profound, began to circulate, first among a few listeners, and then across the globe. His voice had become a remedy for the troubled and anxious, a tool for healing in a chaotic world. Each tape contained a new session of calming thoughts, gentle affirmations, and words of encouragement, designed to help listeners release their worries and find inner peace. People, young and old, from all walks of life, listened to his tapes, every day, carrying them with them like a touchstone of serenity. Soon, his humble recordings became a sensation, with demand for his tapes skyrocketing. As his reputation grew, so did the value of his tapes. What began as a simple act of speaking to heal others turned into a lucrative business, with tapes selling for incredible amounts as more people sought the soothing balm of his voice. The world had become overwhelmed with anxiety, stress, and fear, and his voice was the antidote. It wasn't long before his tapes were worth millions, and he became known as the healing voice. Celebrities, professionals, and everyday people alike paid fortunes just to listen to his calming tones, as they helped them cope with the pressures of modern life. But as the dream unfolded, the man began to realize that while his success was growing, it was not the wealth that mattered most, it was the impact he had on others. His voice had not just cured sadness or alleviated anxiety. It had given people something far more valuable: hope. Hope that they were not alone in their struggles. Hope that there was a way through the chaos. And hope that they could find peace in a world that often felt too loud and overwhelming. He could see the difference his words made in people's lives. They came to him seeking relief, and through his voice, they found solace. He had given them the gift of stillness, a gift that they would treasure forever. As the dream began to fade and he awoke, the man lay still for a moment, contemplating the dream he had just experienced. The peace he felt in his sleep lingered, and he realized that it wasn't the millions of tapes or the financial success that mattered. It was the act of healing others, of using his unique gift to bring comfort to those who needed it most. Inspired by the dream, he began working towards making his voice a tool for good in the real world. He recorded meditation guides, positive affirmations, and stress-relieving talks, eventually releasing them to the world. People listened, finding relief, joy, and healing in his words. Though his tapes didn't sell for millions in reality, the impact of his voice was priceless. The dream had reminded him of the power of kindness, the ability to heal with words, and the incredible value of offering a piece of calm to a world in constant turmoil. And as he continued to share his voice, he realized that sometimes the simplest things like a calm, soothing voice could bring the greatest peace. One night, overwhelmed by the struggles of everyday life, the man drifted into a deep, peaceful sleep. In his dream, he found himself standing on the edge of a vast, sparkling ocean, the warm sun kissing his skin and the scent of salt water filling the air. As he gazed out at the horizon, he saw an island in the distance, a lush, tranquil paradise, untouched by the chaos of the world. In his dream, he knew exactly what he needed to do. Without hesitation, he bought the island, a small, secluded place where the troubles of the outside world couldn't reach. The island was perfect. Its beaches were soft white sand, its forests filled with ancient trees that whispered in the breeze, and its waters so clear that you could see the life beneath them. He built a retreat, not just any resort, but a sanctuary for people who needed peace, healing, and escape from the pressures of their hectic lives. As he began to develop the island, he made sure everything was designed to help visitors find serenity and tranquility. The retreat was more than just luxurious, it was a place for people to reconnect with themselves, a haven for anyone seeking rest for their mind, body, and spirit. He brought in experts in every field of wellness, spiritual guides, therapists, meditation instructors, and nutritionists, all committed to helping people find healing and inner peace. Guests would arrive weary from their busy lives and leave rejuvenated, filled with a renewed sense of purpose. They would spend their days in peaceful solitude, taking long walks on the beach, practicing yoga on sunlit decks, meditating in the cool shade of the island's forest, and enjoying meals made from the freshest local ingredients. The healing energy of the island seemed to work wonders on everyone who visited, and word began to spread. Soon, the retreat became the most sought-after destination in the world. Celebrities, business moguls, and the ultra-wealthy all arrived, eager to experience the magic of the island and its life-changing effects. The man was no longer just the owner of a piece of land. He had created something much more valuable, a sanctuary of peace in a world filled with noise. As the years passed, the island transformed into an exclusive haven, one so rare and valuable that only the wealthiest could afford to visit. The cost of a stay became astronomical, but no one seemed to mind. They paid any price for the chance to unwind, to heal, and to reconnect with their true selves. The man's dream retreat became legendary, a symbol of both peace and opulence. He watched as people arrived burdened by their struggles, only to leave with their spirits lifted, their hearts full, and their minds clear. He knew that what he had built was more than just a business or a luxury destination. It was a gift to the world, a space where people could pause and find balance amidst the chaos of their lives. In his dream, the island became a beacon of hope and tranquility, its reputation growing until it was known as the most peaceful and expensive retreat on Earth. But even with all the wealth and success, the man felt a deep satisfaction in knowing that his retreat had changed lives, had brought healing to those who needed it most. The island had become more than just a place. It had become a symbol of the power of peace, healing, and the importance of taking a step back from the demands of the world. When the dream began to fade, the man awoke with a sense of calm and fulfillment, the lessons from the dream still lingering in his heart. He knew that while the island may have been a product of his imagination, the idea behind it, the need for peace and healing, was something he could carry with him. In his waking life, inspired by the dream, he began to seek out ways to bring healing to others, not through a tropical retreat, but in small ways every day. Whether by offering a listening ear or creating spaces of calm in the midst of chaos. And though he didn't own an island, the dream had shown him that the true value of peace and healing wasn't found in the price tag, but in the simple acts of kindness and care we give to others. One evening, as the weight of the world seemed to settle on his shoulders, the man drifted into a peaceful sleep, his mind craving an escape from the worries that had been consuming him. In his dream, he found himself standing in the center of a bustling city. Yet there was something remarkable about him, something that drew people in. It wasn't his clothes, his wealth, or his status. It was his smile. His smile was warm, genuine, and radiated an energy so powerful that it could brighten even the darkest corners of the world. As he smiled, people around him began to change. Faces that had been burdened with worry and stress instantly softened. Their eyes sparkled, and they found themselves laughing, talking, and embracing the joy that seemed to pour from him effortlessly. It wasn't just a smile, it was an invitation to happiness, a beacon of light in a world that often felt too heavy. Word of his incredible smile spread like wildfire, and before he knew it, the biggest brands in the world came knocking at his door. They saw what his smile could do not just for individuals, but for their companies. They knew that the power of his genuine joy could make their products and messages resonate with people in a way nothing else could. In his dream, brands like the most prestigious car companies, tech giants, luxury fashion houses, and even global wellness brands offered him millions just to be the face of their campaigns. His smile became their trademark, a symbol of happiness, success, and positivity that they believed could connect with consumers on a deeper level. He didn't have to say a word, just his presence, his joy, and his ability to spread warmth through a simple smile made everything come alive. Ads featuring his smile became viral sensations. People didn't just want to buy the products, what they truly craved was the feeling of joy that his smile seemed to promise. From the latest smartphones to high-end clothing lines, everything he touched became imbued with an aura of happiness. As he continued to smile, millions of dollars poured in. But more than the money, he began to understand the incredible power of positivity. It was his ability to light up hearts, to make others feel seen, heard, and valued, that made him not just a brand ambassador, but a symbol of hope in a world that often felt divided and uncertain. Everywhere he went, people sought him out not for his wealth or fame, but for the happiness he radiated. His smile had become a force of nature, a reminder that joy could be contagious, and that sometimes the simplest things in life, like a genuine smile, had the power to change the world. The dream continued, and soon, he was no longer just the face of a few products, he was the face of joy itself. People started referring to him as the ambassador of happiness. And it wasn't just brands that sought him. Charities, social movements, and organizations fighting for global causes reached out, hoping his smile could inspire positive change in the world. It became clear to him that his smile wasn't just about personal gain or fame, it was a tool for spreading good, a way to remind others that despite the chaos and struggles of life, there was always room for happiness, light, and love. His dream was more than a financial success, it was a realization that joy, when shared, could create a ripple effect of positivity that reached far beyond what money could measure. And as he awoke from the dream, the sense of warmth stayed with him, not in the form of wealth or contracts, but in the knowledge that something as simple as a smile could hold the power to transform lives. He carried that lesson with him, vowing to share his joy with the world, not through paid endorsements, but through the genuine happiness he could offer to those around him every day. Whether in small gestures or grand acts, he knew that the true worth of his smile lay not in the millions it could bring, but in the hearts it could touch. One night, as the man drifted into a deep, almost otherworldly sleep, he found himself in a peculiar, lucid dream, unlike anything he had ever experienced before. This dream allowed him to not only control what he imagined, but also to craft entire worlds, experiences, and emotions that felt as real as waking life. He could design landscapes of infinite beauty, create thrilling adventures, or evoke the most profound emotions with just a thought. As the dream unfolded, he realized that his ability to dream with such vivid detail and control was something extraordinary, a gift unlike anything the world had ever known. He could shape dreams that made people feel pure joy, deep sorrow, immense love, or spine-tingling excitement, all with a wave of his mental hand. What started as a simple experiment in his sleep began to turn into something much bigger. In this dream world, the man discovered that people could experience his dreams as if they were real. He could share his dreams with others, allowing them to step into the worlds he created, to feel the emotions he envisioned, and to live the experiences he imagined. But the most astonishing part was that people were willing to pay huge amounts of money just to experience his dreams. Word spread quickly about this remarkable ability, and soon, the world's wealthiest individuals came knocking at his dream door. They paid him fortunes, desperate to feel what he imagined. Some wanted to relive their happiest moments, others craved adventure and excitement, while a few longed to experience feelings of peace and tranquility in ways they had never known. Every night, he would close his eyes, dive into his sleep, and create new dreams tailored to the desires of those who had paid for them. It was an odd sort of business, but it thrived. The man became known as the dream seller, and his sleep became a commodity. People lined up to book a session with him, eager to pay top dollar just to feel the emotions and adventures that he could conjure in his mind. The more intricate and beautiful his dreams, the higher the price. He began crafting entire dreamscapes where people could explore their deepest desires, confront their fears, or simply escape the mundane reality of their lives. No one had ever experienced anything like it. The dreams he sold were immersive, multisensory, and utterly convincing, to the point where the lines between fantasy and reality began to blur for those who lived them. As his fame spread, the demand for his dreams became insatiable. Some clients returned night after night, unable to get enough of the rich, imaginative worlds he created. The man, though initially overwhelmed by the power of his newfound ability, began to realize just how much he had stumbled upon. His sleep had become a bridge between the waking world and a place where anything was possible, and people were willing to pay anything to access it. Yet, with the growing fame and wealth, the man started to wonder about the costs of his power. Could dreams, once freely imagined, become a form of control over the lives of others? The more people came to him, the more he felt the weight of his creations on his conscience. Were his dreams truly making people happier, or were they merely offering an escape from the world they needed to confront? Despite these doubts, he couldn't deny the success and wealth that poured in. He had created something that brought joy, escape, and healing to the world. But in his heart, he wondered whether people were truly seeking something beyond the confines of his dreams. Were they searching for a way to experience their own imaginations, or merely running from their realities? Still, as his riches grew and the world flocked to him, he continued to craft his vivid dreams, unable to resist the allure of providing people with the ultimate escape. Each night, as he closed his eyes and drifted back into that magical realm of sleep, he knew that his gift, for better or worse, had transformed him into a powerful figure, one who sold the one thing everyone wanted most: the chance to live out their wildest dreams. And in the end, whether it was a blessing or a curse, he had learned that sometimes the most valuable things in life could not be bought with money yet. People were willing to pay anything to feel what he imagined. One quiet evening, exhausted from the relentless pace of his everyday life, the man lay down in his humble bed, his body yearning for rest. He fell into a deep sleep, but little did he know that this sleep would be unlike any other. In his dream, he found himself in a tranquil, almost surreal world where everything was calm and serene. As he wandered through this dreamscape, he noticed a soft, melodic sound echoing in the air. The sound was unlike anything he had ever heard, gentle yet powerful, soothing yet energizing. It resonated through him, reaching into the very depths of his mind and calming every thought. He realized in that moment that this was no ordinary sound. It was a sound designed to heal, to ease the mind, and to promote deep, restful sleep. His dream became a workshop of sorts, where he worked tirelessly to understand the intricacies of this sound. With each passing moment, the sound evolved, becoming more refined, more perfect. It was as if the universe had given him the perfect formula for restful sleep. When he awoke, the dream stayed with him, and he was struck by the idea that this sound could change the world. He rushed to his desk, scribbling down every detail, every note, every sensation that the sound had awakened in him. It was then that the vision crystallized. He would create a sleep therapy sound that could help people all over the world rest peacefully. This sound, he realized, wasn't just for him. It was a gift for everyone who struggled with the stress and turmoil of daily life, for anyone who had ever tossed and turned in bed, unable to find the deep rest they desperately needed. Over the next few months, he tirelessly worked to turn his dream into reality. He developed an innovative sound system, blending calming frequencies with soothing natural elements like ocean waves, gentle rain, and whispering winds. It wasn't just about creating a pleasant noise, it was about tapping into the brain's ability to relax and heal through carefully designed sound patterns. He fine-tuned it to perfection, using cutting-edge technology to ensure that his sleep therapy sound could help people fall asleep faster, stay asleep longer, and wake up feeling rejuvenated. His creation, which he called Dreamwave, was unlike anything anyone had ever experienced before. People who listened to it described an immediate sense of calm, their worries melting away as they drifted into the deepest sleep they had ever known. Word spread quickly, and soon, his product became the gold standard in sleep technology. Companies, health professionals, and wellness experts all began to endorse it. Sleep disorders that had plagued millions were now being alleviated, thanks to his invention. As Dreamwave became more popular, the man found himself at the helm of a booming industry. The sleep tech market exploded, and his company grew at an astonishing rate, quickly becoming the leading name in the field. He began to revolutionize the way the world thought about rest, blending technology with holistic wellness in ways that no one had imagined. People all over the world, doctors, athletes, students, and even parents turned to his sound therapy to improve their sleep and, by extension, their overall health. He didn't just create a product. He had created a movement, a new way for people to approach the importance of rest in their lives. In a world where sleep deprivation had become a silent epidemic, his invention was the solution. The man, once an ordinary dreamer, had become the undisputed leader of the sleep tech industry. His therapy sound was everywhere, on smartphones, in homes, on airplanes, in hospitals, and in offices. He had transformed an ordinary need into a global revolution. Despite the success and wealth that came with it, he remained deeply humbled by the impact he had on the world. He had not only invented a product, he had created a tool that allowed people to live better lives, to function with clarity and energy, and to face the challenges of the day with the strength that only restful sleep could provide. As his company expanded, he continued to innovate, always striving to create new ways to help people rest. And through it all, he never forgot that it all began with a peaceful slumber, a dream that changed the world, and a sound that gave people the gift of perfect rest. One night, after a long and exhausting day, the man lay down to rest, his mind tired but restless. As he drifted off to sleep, something extraordinary happened. He found himself in a boundless, radiant world, unlike anything he had ever seen before. It wasn't just a dream, it was a universe of his own making. He realized, in awe, that this was a virtual world, a place he had crafted with nothing more than the power of his imagination. The sky shimmered in soft hues of violet and gold, and the landscape stretched endlessly, with peaceful rivers flowing through vibrant meadows and towering mountains that reached toward a sky full of stars. There were no limitations in this world. Anyone who entered could be whoever they wanted to be, experience anything they wished, and feel a sense of freedom and joy like never before. It was a place where burdens of the real world didn't exist, where people could escape the stresses and struggles that weighed them down. As he explored this dream-made universe, the man saw people from all walks of life coming together, smiling, laughing, and enjoying themselves in ways that seemed impossible in the waking world. He saw families reunited, friends sharing adventures, and individuals finding peace and contentment as they immersed themselves in this limitless world. The air was filled with happiness, and the people seemed to glow with positivity, their worries completely forgotten in the wonder of this created reality. Realizing the potential of what he had built, the man had a sudden epiphany. This virtual world could be more than just a dream. It could be real, a new kind of escape, a place where everyone could experience the freedom and joy that he had imagined. He awoke with a spark of inspiration, determined to bring this dream to life. With a clear vision, he set to work, using cutting-edge technology to build the virtual world he had experienced. The platform was unlike anything the world had ever seen, an immersive digital realm, where users could create their own experiences, interact with others, and lose themselves in the beauty and serenity he had dreamt of. It wasn't just a game or a simulation, it was a new kind of reality. He called it Elysium, a world where the only limit was one's imagination. Word spread quickly, and soon, people from every corner of the globe were clamoring to enter Elysium. The allure of a world where happiness was abundant, where dreams could be lived out in an instant, was irresistible. They paid unimaginable sums just for a chance to step into this utopian universe, where they could live out their deepest desires, escape their everyday lives, or simply experience the peace and joy they had always craved. The demand became overwhelming, and soon, entire industries were built around Elysium. People spent fortunes to buy virtual land, design their dream homes, or experience exclusive events within the world. It was more than just an escape. It became an essential part of life. Celebrities, business tycoons, and even governments began investing in Elysium, knowing that it offered something invaluable: an experience of freedom, happiness, and unbounded possibility. The man, who had once dreamed this world into existence, became the undisputed leader of the virtual reality industry. His creation was more than a virtual world, it was a global phenomenon, a way of life. Billions of dollars flowed into his company as people sought their moment of joy, peace, and liberation from their everyday struggles. The man had built an empire, but more than that, he had created something that resonated with the very core of human longing, the desire for freedom, connection, and happiness. Yet, with all the wealth and success came a deep realization. He had opened a door to a new way of living, a place where the barriers between the real world and the virtual could blur, and the line between the two began to fade. While his creation brought immense joy to millions, he couldn't help but wonder if the world outside Elysium was starting to lose its relevance. Still, he remained proud of his accomplishment. He had given people a place to feel truly free, and he had shown the world that even dreams, when realized, could become an empire. As the virtual world continued to thrive, the man knew that in some way, he had changed the course of human experience, creating a space where people could find solace, adventure, and happiness beyond the constraints of reality. And as people paid fortunes just for a fleeting visit to Elysium, he realized that the world he had imagined had become not just a dream, but a powerful force that reshaped how people sought joy, connection, and freedom. One peaceful night, as the man drifted into a deep, restorative sleep, he found himself walking in a vast, enchanted desert. The sand was soft beneath his feet, and the night sky above shimmered with countless stars. In the distance, a faint glimmer caught his eye. Curious, he walked toward it and discovered an ancient, weathered lamp partially buried in the sand. His heart raced with excitement as he dusted it off and, almost instinctively, rubbed the surface. To his amazement, a swirling cloud of smoke erupted from the lamp, and a radiant, golden genie appeared before him. The genie, with a voice as deep and resounding as thunder, spoke, "You have awakened me, and I shall grant you endless wishes, for you are the one who has proven worthy." The man stood in stunned silence, his mind racing with possibilities. Unlike the traditional tales he had heard growing up, this genie didn't offer just 3 wishes. He could ask for as many as he wanted. The power was limitless, and the opportunities endless. For a moment, he considered asking for wealth, fame, and all the material comforts he had ever dreamed of. But then a deeper realization began to settle within him. What good was wealth if it didn't bring happiness to others? What value did fame hold if it didn't create positive change? As the genie waited for his command, the man decided to use his newfound power not for selfish gain, but to help the world. His first wish was simple but profound. "I wish for the ability to heal the sick and bring relief to those in pain." Immediately, the genie's magic swirled around him, and he felt a surge of energy. He began to travel the world, using his gift to heal the ill, comfort the grieving, and bring hope to the hopeless. Wherever he went, people marveled at his miraculous abilities, and soon, he became known as the man who could heal not just bodies, but hearts and minds as well. His next wish was to help those in poverty, and with another wave of the genie's power, he created programs that provided food, clean water, and education to communities in need. His initiatives spread like wildfire, transforming lives and giving people the opportunity to build better futures for themselves. With each wish, the man's heart grew fuller, and the world around him seemed to bloom with newfound hope. His third wish was for knowledge. He wished to understand the deepest truths of the universe, so that he could guide humanity toward greater wisdom and peace. The genie granted this wish, and the man's mind expanded, allowing him to see solutions to global issues that had once seemed insurmountable. He worked tirelessly to spread knowledge, developing technologies and systems that benefited society. And he helped bridge gaps between cultures, teaching the value of compassion and cooperation. With each wish he made, the man continued to enrich the world, building a legacy of kindness, understanding, and prosperity. He saw how his actions rippled through communities, transforming lives and inspiring others to act selflessly. But with every passing day, he realized that the true wealth he had gained wasn't in the material riches he could have had, but in the lives he had touched and the happiness he had spread. His final wish wasn't for anything material. Instead, he wished for the ability to inspire others to be as selfless as he had been, to awaken the same spirit of generosity and compassion in every heart. And so, the genie granted it. The man's example became a beacon of hope, and people everywhere began to follow in his footsteps, using their own talents and resources to make the world a better place. In the end, the man realized that the true magic wasn't in the lamp or the genie, it was in the power to make a difference in the lives of others. When he awoke from his dream, he carried that wisdom with him, using the lessons from his night of endless wishes to guide his every action in the waking world. And though he no longer had the genie's lamp, he knew that the power to create change, to help others, and to thrive in the truest sense was always within him. One quiet evening, after a long day of hard work, the man fell asleep, his mind filled with thoughts of his ordinary life. But as he drifted deeper into slumber, something extraordinary happened. He found himself in a grand, opulent kitchen, surrounded by gleaming pots, fragrant spices, and colorful vegetables he had never seen before. As he looked around, he realized he wasn't just in any kitchen, he was in a dream world where he had become a renowned chef. and the food he prepared had the power to heal the soul. In this dream, his hands moved with precision and grace, chopping, stirring, and seasoning ingredients with an almost supernatural skill. Every dish he created seemed to possess a magical quality, one that transcended mere flavor. His food wasn't just nourishing to the body, it soothed the mind, uplifted the spirit, and brought a sense of peace to anyone who tasted it. Word of his culinary talents spread like wildfire, and soon, royalty, celebrities, and business magnates all across the world were clamoring for a seat at his table. Kings, queens, and CEOs, people of immense power and wealth, waited in line for the chance to experience his food, knowing that it was more than just a meal. It was an experience, a form of therapy that touched the soul in ways words couldn't describe. The man's kitchen became a sanctuary, a place where people could escape their burdens, find comfort, and reconnect with themselves. When the plates were served, there was a quiet reverence in the air. With every bite, the diners felt a profound shift within them. Stress melted away, old wounds healed, and their hearts felt lighter. The man's meals became a symbol of hope and renewal, and those who had once been consumed by the pressures of their positions found solace in the simple, yet profound nourishment he provided. As he stood at his stove, cooking with care and intention, he understood that his gift wasn't just about food, it was about the connection it created between people. It was about restoring balance to lives that had been disrupted by the chaos of the world. And so, he continued to cook, not for fame or fortune, but because he knew that his food had the power to heal, to bring people back to themselves, and to remind them of the beauty of life. Soon, his kitchen became more than just a place to eat. It became a pilgrimage site for anyone in search of peace, rejuvenation, and clarity. The world's most powerful and influential people sat at his table not to discuss business or politics, but to savor a moment of quiet, to reflect on the gifts of life, and to reconnect with their inner selves. The man's humble dream had become a legend, a place where food wasn't just consumed, it was experienced. And as the years passed, the man realized that the true reward of his success wasn't the adoration of kings or the accolades of the rich and famous. It was the quiet joy of knowing that he had touched countless lives with the healing power of his food. And when he awoke from his dream, he carried with him the knowledge that sometimes the simplest acts like cooking from the heart could change the world in ways that wealth and power never could. Inspired by the dream, he knew that the greatest meals were not just those that filled the stomach, but those that nourished the soul, and that this wisdom would guide him in every kitchen he entered from that moment on. One serene night, as the man closed his eyes, he found himself drifting into a world far beyond anything he could have imagined. In his dream, he was no longer the struggling person he had been in his waking life, but instead, the owner of a magnificent floating city. It was not just a city, but a utopia, suspended in the sky, like a shimmering jewel, surrounded by soft clouds and bathed in golden sunlight. The city was a marvel of technology and compassion, where no one suffered from hunger, pain, or poverty. People lived in harmony, their needs met by the advanced systems of the city, and the environment was lush, with parks and gardens that seemed to flourish in every corner. The floating city was a place where wealth was measured not in material possessions, but in kindness, where the well-being of every citizen mattered more than profit, and where love and community thrived above all. In this dream, the man was not just a wealthy billionaire, he was a benevolent ruler, a figure revered not for his riches, but for his generosity and compassion. He had created a world where people didn't have to fight for survival, where healthcare, education, and happiness were free, and everyone was treated with dignity. His every decision was guided by empathy, and he worked tirelessly to ensure that the floating city was a beacon of hope, a place where dreams came true and where no one was left behind. As word of the floating city spread, it became a symbol for the world, a shining example of what was possible when wealth was used for the good of humanity. People from all over the world marveled at the city's success, and soon, leaders, scholars, and thinkers came from every nation to study how the city had been built. They were astonished not just by the advanced technology that powered it, but by the kindness and love that permeated its very fabric. The floating city was a place where people could heal from past wounds, where children were taught not just knowledge but also the values of compassion, empathy, and respect. It was a city where creativity flourished, where no one was limited by their circumstances, and where the dreams of the people were nurtured and encouraged. And at the heart of it all was the man who had made it possible, a billionaire, not because of his money, but because of his heart. His kindness was unparalleled, and as the world looked upon him, they didn't just see a wealthy man, they saw a visionary who had made the world a better place for all. As the floating city grew, so did his reputation, and soon he became known across the globe not for his wealth but for his unwavering dedication to improving the lives of others. People called him the kindest billionaire to ever exist, and his name became synonymous with compassion, generosity, and hope. In the end, it wasn't the floating city's technology or its splendor that made it so extraordinary. It was the love and care that had gone into creating it, the knowledge that every person who lived there was valued and cherished. And when the man awoke from his dream, he carried with him the powerful realization that even in his small, humble life, he could make a difference. The dream had shown him that true wealth wasn't measured in money or power, but in the positive impact one had on the world and the lives they touched. Inspired by this vision, the man knew that he could create change in his own way, no matter how small, and that the kindness he showed to others could make the world a better place, one action at a time. One cold, quiet night, as the man fell into a deep slumber, he found himself in a strange yet wondrous world, a place unlike anything he had ever imagined. In this dream, he was not a mere man, but the owner of time itself. Time was no longer a fleeting concept, a series of hours slipping away unnoticed. It was a tangible entity, and he had the power to shape it, mold it, and offer it to others. People came to him from all corners of the world, not seeking wealth or fame, but something far more precious: moments of joy, peace, and love. The man's gift was simple yet profound. He could grant people moments where they could feel truly alive, where happiness and calm washed over them like a soothing tide. It wasn't about wealth or material possessions, but about offering people the rarest and most valuable currency, the perfect, fleeting moments that everyone yearned for. In this dream world, he became a silent keeper of time. He had the ability to freeze moments of pure joy, to suspend the chaos of the world and offer people a brief respite of peace. A young mother could spend a moment of stillness, gazing into her child's eyes, experiencing a depth of love she had never known. A businessman, worn down by years of stress, could find a moment of tranquility where the weight of his responsibilities lifted and his mind cleared. Couples who had drifted apart could be given a moment to reconnect, rekindling the spark of love that had once brought them together. But the most extraordinary part of his gift was that people did not pay him with money or material goods. Instead, they paid him with something far more valuable: gratitude. It was a currency that couldn't be quantified, a currency that came straight from the heart. The joy, peace, and love that he granted others filled him with a sense of fulfillment that no amount of wealth could ever provide. The world around him was a beautiful tapestry, woven together by these moments, these exchanges of emotion and connection. As the days passed in his dream, the man realized that time was the one thing no one could control, and yet it was the one thing everyone craved the most. People were so often consumed by the rush of life, by deadlines and distractions, that they forgot to savor the precious moments that truly mattered. He had become the keeper of these moments, and the gratitude he received from those whose lives he touched was enough to fill his heart with an unshakable peace. As more people came to him, their stories unfolded, stories of joy, of healing, of reconciliation. He saw families reunited, friendships rekindled, and souls restored. With each passing day, he offered more moments of serenity, and the world around him grew brighter, lighter, and more connected. But the most incredible part of it all was that he never once asked for anything in return except for the simple act of gratitude. It was in this exchange that he found his true wealth. When the dream finally began to fade, the man felt an overwhelming sense of contentment, knowing that the moments he had shared with others had been far more meaningful than anything he could have achieved through material wealth. He awoke with the warm glow of that dream still lingering in his heart, understanding now that true success in life wasn't measured by what one could accumulate, but by the joy and peace they could offer to others. Time, after all, was the greatest gift of all, because the moments we share with others are the ones that truly define our lives. Inspired by the dream, the man resolved to live his life with a deeper sense of purpose, cherishing the moments he had and offering kindness, peace, and love to those around him, knowing that the gratitude he would receive in return was more than enough. The wallet never ran dry.